Great, so I'm going to take you guys through a very brief recap of 2022. I was stood on this stage November, just over 12 months ago, and quite a lot has happened since then. So I want to take you through some of those developments, and then we'll go into the new announcement. So since we were last up here, we've innovated quite a few new capabilities. As some of you will have heard, we've broadened and deepened our relationship with a lot of government organisations. And actually, we worked hand in hand with one of those organisations, not the one who was on stage earlier, to build out some new capability around geospatial data. As you may well know, in the government space, there is often a wealth of data around places, people, locations, and paths. And so we can now take that data in. And that co-innovation with that particular government client means that this capability is now available to all our clients. The second thing was some of our analytical capability. We brought to the market QPython. For those Python users, I won't use Python jockeys as was used earlier. I don't quite know what that means or if it's offensive. I hope it's not. But what that allows Python users to do is interact with all of the data that is in the Quantexa platform natively. We've also brought out detection packs. Detection packs allow us to take all of that verticalized IP, things like scores, scenarios, topologies, package it up, and deploy it quickly and easily. We've also brought to the market lots of real-time capabilities. Many of our customers are looking to use us in more real-time use cases, whether it be insurance policy pricing, banking application fraud, or in fact real-time border checks, which we're being deployed for. And so we brought out integration with Kafka streaming and something called the Entity Store, which I'm going to cover a little bit later on. But the Entity Store allows you to essentially low latency query all the data in the Quantexa system. And finally, we've made a real shift over the last year into the master data management space. People are seeing Quantexa as a data foundation, and master data management is one of those key pillars. And as part of that, in any MDM system, you need to be able to manage the entities, split them, merge them, update the details about them. So we've introduced data stewardship functionality. So those are some of the highlights, a lot more that I could never cover on a single slide. Now, everybody on stage today has talked about Customer 360, single client view, entity resolution. And we really do believe entity resolution is the foundation for decision making across the entire enterprise, whether that's protect, optimize, or grow. I'm going to make a bold prediction, though, and I won't ask people to put their hands up, but I suspect almost every organization dialed in or in this room has previously heard of or embarked on a single client view project, and that those projects have failed. That's classic. We often see, no matter whether it was a vendor or whether it was a self-build project that took multiple years, these often either don't really deliver on what they originally set out to or fail entirely, costing millions of dollars, taking up years of effort, and dare I say it, sometimes resulting in tattered careers for the people who sponsored them. But Quantexa is different, and I hope that's come across today. You've seen from our customers that we deliver on our promises. Our projects do not fail, period. And what we do is actually a lot more ambitious than single client view systems. We're not just trying to understand your client. We're trying to understand your suppliers, your employees, your customer's customer, their supply chain, the counterparties. We're trying to understand that across vast volumes of data and for some of the most complex organizations in the world. We've typically been able to deliver POCs in 4 to 6 weeks. We've gone into production, in some cases in City, barring all the questions and answered, in 4, 6 months. But we don't want to rest on our laurels. We want to bring that in. We want to be able to complete POCs in hours and go into production in weeks. So I'm really excited to announce today Entity Resolution Accelerate. Entity Resolution Accelerate brings Quantexa's market-leading entity resolution and makes it available for all. You can deploy the Quantexa platform in minutes and get results in hours. So what is Entity Resolution Accelerate? ER Accelerate is 5 key components. The first one is data fusion. Everyone's talked about data fusion. We have a product called Data Fusion that is about bringing the data into the platform. I'm going to demo that shortly. Entity resolution. This is not entity resolution light. This is the full power of what Quantexa delivers for our organizations like Citi, shrink-wrapped and made available and deployable really quickly and easily. It offers the same performance and the same scalability. Entity quality scoring. A new capability that allows us to, across the data, understand where your data issues are and flag up entities which look like they are built incorrectly or badly. And that allows you to iterate, tune, or even involve data stewards in the fixing of that data. The entity store. Not only does that support the lower latency real-time use cases I talked about earlier, this is a single place to go and get entity data across your enterprise via APIs and available en masse. And finally, Entity Explorer, some of those dashboards that you saw earlier, configured and made available for entity resolution. So with that in mind, I'm going to unlock my laptop, hopefully using my face. There we go. We're in. If we could just switch over to the demo. So I'm going to take you through, in less than, hopefully, 12 minutes, starting from a completely empty system. There's no data here. We're going to set the system up with a couple of data sources, and we're going to run entity resolution end to end. So we're going to go into the settings and go over to the Data Fusion component, the new UI for ingesting data. I'm going to create a new project. A project essentially has all the configuration, all the data sets that you're going to load into the system. That's my QuanCon demo. The first thing that you might be able to see, and apologies for those at the back of the room, we have a set of out-of-the-box entity types that we ship with our system. Individuals, businesses, addresses, telephones, and emails. Those are the cross-sector ones. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, those are entities that make sense. But of course, in any typical deployment of Quantexa, you're going to have other entity types if you're in banking, bank accounts, insurance, vehicles, etc. And of course, you can add to that list. Up the top, we then have our data sources. Obviously, as I've started here, no data sources yet. I'm going to start adding them. I can go to the cloud and bring those in, but for the purposes of this demo and to keep it simple, I'm going to bring in some CSVs that I have on this laptop. The first one is my customer data source, which I'm just going to upload into the system. And what I want the system to do is deduplicate all my customer data, tell me where I have duplicates within my customer base, but also I want to attach that or match that to a watch list file, which we've got over here. So this is my second source, which I'm going to call watch list. And we'll bring those both into the system. Now, what the system does, it doesn't just look at what is in those files. Remember, a CSV has no real schema associated with it. It's just a set of data. It looks actually at the contents of that data. So down the left-hand side, you can see all of the fields that the system has found in our file. Underneath, we can then see the underlying data associated with that. So we've got a really nice place we can go and have a look. And we can see there is for example, that top row, Javier Jones, with a particular date of birth and a particular address that we see from the data. Now, what the system's actually done, rather than just, as I say, looking at the structure of the data, it's looked at the contents of the data, and it's tried to do as much of the work for me as it can. And what you can see here is some of the things that it's tagged. When you see these little pink icons with these little person symbols, that's telling us that the system thinks these fields are talking about a person. These ones are address information. This one's a phone, and this one's a business down at the bottom. So the system's done a great job of actually flagging and tagging all of the data automatically for me so I don't have to do so much. It's also passed those fields into our parsers and cleansers, cleaning the names, cleaning the addresses, cleaning the phone numbers. And actually what we can do in the front end, in the UI, is see the effect of that. If I click on the cleansing tab, what this allows us to do is see side by side the white data, which is the raw data passed into the system, and the green data is the cleansed data. So for example, Javier Jones has been nicely parsed out. If I scroll right, we can see the addresses. Pair street, pair ST, all normalized to the same thing as we scroll right, so that when we come to do the matching, all the data is ready and standardized, ready for that matching. But what the system's not doing a particularly good job at here is the telephone numbers. And that's because, in this case, we leverage a library called Google LibPhone, which parses telephone numbers. And it does a great job if it knows what country the data is from, or if you've got a country code. In this case, we haven't told it that, and the system didn't know which field to use. So as a user, I'm going to go in, and I'm just going to configure that. We've got our telephone parser here. I'm going to go in, and I'm going to look for a country flag, customer country in this case, configure that. And then what we can do is essentially rerun that and see the result. Before I quickly click that, I'm just going to finally show you the business cleansing that's happening over here. For example, Green Fence Limited, all being normalized into the right form. So what we'll do, let's just quickly click that refresh button. We've updated it. We can now see the results straight away. And as I scroll right, we can see all our phone numbers being really nicely parsed out based on that change I've just made. The one final thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a look at this national ID. You'll notice that there's a national ID here which doesn't have a little toggle against it. The system hasn't detected necessarily that that is perhaps a social security number or similar. Now, what I do want to do is I want to tie that to my entity. And I'm going to do that very simply. Click on the individual. You can see the individual ID flag. And I'm going to put the national ID in. Everything else has been configured for me. I'm not going to do anything more on this data set. It's all done. It's all ready to go. As I switch back, I can show you the watch list one. And actually, in this case, all the fields are nicely tagged. If I take a look at the cleansing, everything is pretty good. No real gaps that we're seeing here. So it's basically going to mark this one as done. So in a couple of minutes, I brought in 2 new data sets. The system has analyzed the contents, worked out how to resolve them together, and done the vast majority of the work for me. I've just corrected a couple of things. I'm going to snapshot that. I'm going to say that's a new version that I want to create, so I can always go back to that if I wish to. And I'm going to kick off a build. I'm going to kick off a run of this. I'm just going to call this run 1. Now, we can deploy this in your environment, in a cloud environment, or in the case in a virtual machine. What I'm doing here is I can choose to run this on a cloud cluster, for example, in a Google Cloud or Amazon, create a new cluster. I can use one of your existing ones, or for the purpose of this demo and for speed, I'm going to use the in-memory runner, which is great for small volumes of data. Now, that takes about 2 minutes. While it's doing that, I'm going to show you some of the other things that ER Accelerate allows you to do. When you drill into any one of these entity types, you'll be able to see the full set of matching rules that are being used as part of all of our different entity resolution templates. And by default, many of you will know we ship 4 templates out of the box. We ship a strict template. If you're doing master data management, you don't want overlinking. You want to be very tight on your entity resolution. We ship a default, which tries to balance overlinking and underlinking. We ship a fuzzy variant, which is more for financial crime, casts the net wider, ensures you don't miss anything, and very fuzzy, which you would only use on a case-by-case basis. If I've got a concern about Jamie Hutton, I might choose to build him fuzzy. For every single one of these match combinations, you can click into them, you can decide which template they exist in, and assign a whole load of exclusions and weightings and thresholds to them. So the full power of entity resolution that we deploy at these tier 1 organizations is available in this front end for you to alter, change, and see. And we also have attributes, which allow us to understand how the data is going to be aggregated to this golden record view. If I'm Jamie, James, and Jim, which name am I going to choose? Do I trust source A over source B? Do I want to take the most common? Do I want to take the latest? All of these are the things you might want to set up in your entity attributes. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our iteration and check on its progress. We're nearly done. 3 jobs out of 4 complete. This gives us really nice tracking as well. You can see for every single thing that's occurring in this system, you can drill down into the underlying logs, and you can ultimately see how long the system is taking to process all of this. So I reckon we've got about 20 seconds left to go. What I'm going to do next is once that's complete, I'm going to set this iteration what we call live, and there it is. And I'm going to set it active now. So at that point, we've resolved all our data together. We've got a brand new set of configuration, and now I can go through to Individual Explorer, and I'm just going to hit the Run button. So what the system's done here, it's resolved those 2 files together. And do you remember the first question that we were trying to answer was, what is the level of duplication in the data? And that's what this chart is telling us here. So this is allowing us to see the vast majority of our entities just connect to like one thing or two things. But there is a bit of a long tail, and there are some down in the bottom bucket. I can switch this to table view so you guys can see the numbers. There are 3 entities that connect to more than 10 customer profiles. Kind of interesting, 10 times duplication or more, 10 different customer records that you're currently not treating as a single individual in this case. The second thing that we wanted to know from this demo was how often did the data sources overlap with each other? And that's what this is showing us. We've got a whole load of watch list records, a whole load of customer records, and then we've got the combination of the two. And again, if I want to, I can start drilling into these. So let's just click on customer and watch list and filter these down. In this case, down the bottom, we can now see the 5 customers that have been resolved across all of those data sources. Not only that, we can drill into some of these. So if I want to, and I'll just have a look at some of these, like Christoph, for example. This is a person who we've resolved across all of this data, and he's got multiple different names. We've got some other individuals like this Vasily individual. Again, a couple of people that are connected to 2 different records, the customer and the watch list in this case. And this one is quite an interesting example where we've got multiple name variants, all being resolved down together by the system. The last thing that I want to do as part of this demo, I'm just going to clear this filter and just rerun it again so I've got all my entities back. I just want to quickly touch on the entity score that you see up in the top right-hand side of this dashboard. Obviously, a lot of these entities are going to be well produced, but there will be some which perhaps are low quality. And what we can do is take a look at some of those low quality ones. So if I switch over to the table, you'll see that there's one entity which has a score of between 10 and 20. And there's one which is a score of 30 to 40. So I'm just going to add those and run it. And here are our 2 lowest quality entities within the system. Let's take a look at these guys. We've got a guy called James Anderson. So he's got 2 different names, James and Jimmy Anderson. That's not too bad. They're 2 derivations of the same name. We can see 3 dates of birth, 21st of August, 24th of August of the same year, but also the 10th of January, 11 years different. So a very, very different date of birth. So the first one, maybe a typo. Third one seems a bit strange. But more than that, 2 national identifiers, 2 different social security numbers associated with this individual. And what we can do is we can actually understand why this has been resolved together using something called the Entity Lab. And I'll just show you what this is showing. When you see these, on the left-hand side, we see a densely connected cluster. This is one of our people. And on the right-hand side, we see another densely connected cluster. And what we can actually see is they're being connected by a weak piece of data, which is first name synonym, surname, and telephone number, where the telephone number is all the zeros. Now, typically, by the way, guys, we detect this stuff automatically and eliminate it. For the purpose of this demo, I wanted to put in some examples of overlinking, which the system could then detect. So in this case, what the system's done is it's detected a really weak point in the graph, and that's something that we can flag up automatically. If I want to take a look at David Smith, I can do exactly the same. Very similar pattern. In this case, you've got 2 densely connected clusters. We've got a David Smith and a Christopher Smith being connected by this national ID. So in a very short space of time, I've gone from a totally empty system, uploaded 2 data sources, combined them all together. I've got dashboards built out of the box, and I've flagged some potential entity quality. This is being done in a time that we could never have achieved before. So if we could just switch back to the slides, I just want to touch on where we're heading next. We are absolutely laser focused here at Quantexa on reducing time to value for our customers. We think that the less time you spend getting the system up and running, the faster you can deliver on the promises. You can start getting some of those outcomes, whether they be protecting, optimizing, or growing. But Entity Resolution Accelerate is just the first step on a longer journey. We are going to be simplifying the entire platform, making all the components, whether it's networks, the out-of-the-box analytics and detection packs we talked about, and the visualization, making them quicker, easier, faster, and simpler to deploy. So by this time next year, hopefully we will have accelerated the vast majority of the entire product platform. So I very much look forward to QuantCon 2024 to give you guys an update on that. Just before I go, I wanted to thank all of you guys on the room and the 400 plus who we have dialed in on the dial-in for trusting us to deliver on some of these absolutely incredible projects at quite unbelievable scale. It is honestly hard standing on stage here today to believe how far we've come in our short 7 years. And we couldn't have done it without the trust and belief that you all have in us. So thank you.